Hey viewers, welcome to African Tales by Affy. Please kindly click the subscribe button to get notified for more amazing stories. In the bustling city of Igbo, where traders filled the streets with their vibrant wares and merchants called out to passers-by, lived a young and handsome trader named Iko. He was known for his charm and business acumen, a man whose presence turned heads wherever he went. Yet, despite his success, Iko's heart was restless, longing for something beyond wealth and admiration. One fateful afternoon, as he set up his stall in the marketplace, he caught sight of Ahisha, the daughter of the influential Alhaji Talamu. She moved with grace, her laughter like a melody amidst the clamor of the market. Though Iko had a girlfriend, he found himself captivated by Ahisha's presence. "Iko, you're staring," his friend Musa teased, nudging him. "Do you not know who she is? That's Alhaji Talamu's daughter. She's already promised to Fusa, the governor's son." Iko smirked. "What's a promise compared to love?" Musa shook his head. "You play with fire, my friend." But Iko was undeterred. Over time, he found ways to cross paths with Ahisha, their encounters growing longer, their words more intimate. Ahisha, too, could not deny the pull she felt towards him. Her heart, once set on obedience to her father's wishes, now fluttered with excitement whenever she saw Iko. One evening, as the sun cast a golden glow over the city, they met in a secluded part of the market. Ahisha looked into Iko's eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to marry Fusa. My father says it's my duty, but my heart belongs to you." Iko took her hands in his. "Then let's find a way to be together." Ahisha hesitated before speaking again. "If I conceive a child, my father will have no choice but to let me stay with you. He would never marry me off to another man while carrying your child." Iko was taken aback. "Are you certain? This is not a decision to be made lightly." She nodded. "I know my father. This is the only way." Though he knew the risks, Iko's desire for Ahisha overpowered any reservations. They began meeting in secret, their love growing stronger with each stolen moment. But secrets have a way of unraveling. One evening, as Ahisha returned home, her father was waiting. Alhaji Talamu's face was stern, his eyes dark with suspicion. "Where have you been, Ahisha?" She swallowed hard. "At the market, Baba." "With Iko?" His voice was sharp, and she knew there was no use in lying. "Yes," she admitted, her hands trembling. Alhaji Talamu's fury was swift. "You disgrace this family. You were promised to Fusa, yet you betray us for a mere traitor?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Baba, I love him." "Love?" he scoffed. "What has love to do with honor?" Days later, the truth could no longer be hidden. Ahisha was with child, and Alhaji Talamu's rage knew no bounds. "You are no longer my daughter," he declared, his voice cold as steel. "You have shamed me, and you will bear the consequences." With nowhere to go, Ahisha ran to Iko, who welcomed her with open arms. Despite the joy of being together, shadows loomed over them. They had defied tradition, and the weight of that defiance bore heavily upon them. But for now, they held each other close, believing love would be enough to see them through. Ahisha's presence in Iko's home brought both joy and trouble. The modest house he shared with his sisters, Abani and Lami, suddenly felt smaller under the weight of unspoken words and cold stares. Though Iko was thrilled to have the woman he loved by his side, his sisters were less than welcoming. One evening, as Ahisha carefully set the table for dinner, Abani let out a heavy sigh and crossed her arms. "So, brother, is this how we live now? Taking in a woman who has brought disgrace to her own family?" Iko's jaw clenched. "Abani, that's enough." "Is it?" Lami chimed in, shaking her head. "Ever since she came here, things have not been the same. We are struggling more than before. We barely have enough to eat, and now you take on more responsibility?" Ahisha lowered her gaze, feeling the sting of their words. She had lost her father, her home, and now she was being treated as a burden. Iko noticed the pain on her face and reached for her hand. "I love Ahisha, and she is carrying my child. That should be enough reason for you to welcome her." Abani scoffed. "Love does not put food on the table, Iko." The tension in the room was unbearable. Ahisha swallowed her pride and spoke softly, "I will not be a burden to anyone. I will find a way to help." But no one responded. As months passed, Ahisha's belly grew, and so did the distance between her and Iko's sisters. They blamed her for their misfortunes, convinced that ever since she arrived, their struggles had worsened. Despite their coldness, Iko did his best to keep her happy, but the stress of providing for everyone was beginning to wear him down. One day, while at the marketplace, Iko felt a sharp pain in his side. He stumbled against his stall, gripping his waist. His friend Musa rushed to his side. "Iko! Are you all right?" Iko waved him off, breathing heavily. "It's nothing. Just tired." But it wasn't just fatigue. The pain grew worse in the following weeks, and soon Iko could barely stand for long periods. Ahisha, worried, insisted they see a doctor. After much persuasion, Iko agreed. The doctor's words struck them like thunder. "Your kidneys are failing," he said gravely. "Without a transplant, you will not survive." Ahisha's heart sank. "What can we do?" "A transplant costs a lot of money," the doctor explained. "Without it, he may not last another year." Tears filled Ahisha's eyes as she turned to Iko. "We will find the money. I promise." Iko's health continued to decline, and with it, their hope. They needed an impossibly large sum for the operation, and no matter how hard Ahisha pleaded, no one was willing to help. Then, one evening, she made a decision that changed everything. Ahisha went to the home she had once called her own, standing before the large gates of Al-Haji Talamu's mansion. She swallowed her pride and knocked. A servant answered, staring at her with surprise. "I need to see my father," she said firmly. Minutes later, she stood before Al-Haji Talamu, whose expression remained unreadable. "Why are you here?" he asked coldly. Ahisha fell to her knees. "Baba, please. Iko is dying. He needs a kidney transplant. I am begging you to help us." Al-Haji Talamu let out a humorless laugh. You defied me. You chose shame over honor. And now you come to me, begging? Tears streamed down her face. I was wrong, Baba. But please, help him. If not for me, then for my unborn child. He shook his head. You are no longer my daughter. You made your choice. Ahisha felt her heart break all over again. She had no one left to turn to. Or so she thought. There was still one person who had the power to save Iko. But the cost would be greater than she ever imagined. Ahisha left Alhaji Talamu's mansion with a heart full of despair. The man who had raised her had turned his back on her in her moment of greatest need. But she refused to give up. She wiped her tears and thought of the only other person who might be able to help, Fusa. That night, she sat by Iko's bedside, watching his shallow breathing. His once strong and confident face was now pale and sunken. He stirred and opened his eyes slowly. Ahisha, what is it? He asked weakly. She forced a smile. Nothing, my love. Just thinking. Iko reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. You shouldn't worry so much. Whatever happens, I want you to know that I am grateful for you. Ahisha blinked back tears. Don't talk like that. I will find a way. I promise. Iko sighed and closed his eyes again, too weak to argue. Ahisha sat in silence, her mind racing. She knew what she had to do, but the very thought made her stomach turn. The next morning, Ahisha made her way to Fusa's estate. The grand mansion stood as a symbol of the wealth and power he possessed. The guards at the gate recognized her immediately and hesitated before allowing her inside. She was led through a lavish hallway until she reached a large room where Fusa sat, sipping tea. He smirked when he saw her. Ah, Ahisha. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? Ahisha took a deep breath. I need your help. Fusa leaned back, amused. Help? From me? The man your father wanted you to marry? And yet, you chose another. Tell me, why should I help you now? She clenched her fists, forcing herself to remain calm. Iko is dying. He needs a kidney transplant, and we don't have the money. You are the only one who can help me. Fusa's smirk widened. Ah, how ironic. You refused me for him, and now you come begging on his behalf. And what do I get in return, Ahisha? Ahisha's heart pounded. She knew what he wanted. Anything, she whispered, barely able to say the word. Fusa's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Anything? That is a dangerous promise. But I do have one condition. Ahisha looked up, dreading his next words. Spend one night with me, and I will give you the money. A wave of nausea swept over her. She wanted to scream, to run, to curse him for his cruelty. But Iko's life depended on this. She thought of his smile, of the love they shared, of the child growing inside her. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Fine, she whispered. Fusa clapped his hands together. Good. Then let's not waste time. The night was the longest of Ahisha's life. When morning came, she dressed silently, avoiding Fuse's gaze. He handed her a bag of money, his smirk never fading. You made the right choice, Ahisha. I hope Iko appreciates your sacrifice. She took the money and walked out without another word, feeling as though a piece of her soul had been ripped away. She told herself it didn't matter, that all that mattered was saving Iko. When she returned home, she handed Iko's sisters the money. Take this to the hospital. Schedule the surgery. Iko is going to live. Abani and Lami stared at her, shocked. Where did you get this? Lami asked suspiciously. Ahisha forced a smile. Does it matter? Abani narrowed her eyes but said nothing. The most important thing was saving their brother. As the days passed and Iko prepared for his surgery, Ahisha kept her secret buried deep inside her. She reminded herself that it had all been worth it. That nothing mattered more than Iko's life. But a dark shadow had fallen over her heart, and she knew things would never be the same again. The day of the surgery arrived, and the hospital was filled with an air of nervous anticipation. Ahisha sat in the waiting room, wringing her hands as she anxiously waited for news. Iko's sisters, Abani and Lami, sat beside her in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The weight of the past days had drained them all, but the only thing that mattered now was Iko's survival. Hours later, the doctor finally emerged. The surgery was a success, he announced with a reassuring smile. Iko will need time to recover, but he is going to be fine. Tears of relief streamed down Ahisha's face as she whispered a prayer of gratitude. She rushed to Iko's bedside, where he lay weak but alive. His eyes fluttered open, and he managed a faint smile. You did it, Ahisha, you saved me. She forced a smile. Of course. I would do anything for you. Iko squeezed her hand weakly. I don't know how to repay you. Ahisha shook her head. You don't have to. Just focus on getting better. For the next few weeks, Ahisha remained by Iko's side, helping him through his recovery. She fed him, changed his bandages, and reassured him when he doubted his strength. The bond they once had seemed to grow even stronger, and for the first time in a long while, Ahisha allowed herself to feel truly happy. One evening, as Iko sat on the veranda, staring at the stars, he reached for Ahisha's hand. I never imagined coming this close to death would show me how much I truly love you. She looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. And I never imagined how far I would go to save you. He kissed her hand softly. Marry me, Ahisha. Let's make this official. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. Yes, Iko. I will marry you. They had a simple court wedding, attended by close friends and family. Despite the disapproval of Iko's sisters, who still harbored resentment towards Ahisha, Iko made it clear that his love for her was unwavering. Ahisha finally felt secure in the life she had fought so hard to protect. However, the happiness was short-lived. A few weeks after the wedding, Ahisha began feeling strange. Her appetite changed, she felt unusually tired, and an unshakable wave of nausea followed her throughout the day. One afternoon, While cleaning their bedroom, she stumbled upon an old pregnancy test she had forgotten about. Her hands trembled as she looked at it. The memory of that dreadful night with Fusa came flooding back. She rushed to the nearest pharmacy and bought a test. The minutes it took to reveal the result felt like an eternity. When she finally saw the 2 dark lines confirming her worst fear, her heart nearly stopped. She was pregnant. And it wasn't Iko's child. Panic set in. What was she going to do? Should she tell Iko? Should she keep it a secret? Should she get rid of it? That night, as she sat beside Iko in bed, she held the test in her hands, debating whether to tell him. Just as she was about to speak, Iko placed his hand on hers. "You've been quiet all day. What's wrong?" She swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Nothing, love. Just tired." He kissed her forehead. "You've been through so much. Rest, my love. We have a lifetime ahead of us." Tears welled up in her eyes as guilt consumed her. She turned away from him, clutching the pregnancy test in her hands, and whispered to herself, "What have I done?" The days passed in a blur, and Ahisha's turmoil grew heavier with each moment. She was carrying a child that was not Iko's, and the truth clawed at her like an unbearable weight. Every time she looked into Iko's trusting eyes, guilt gnawed at her, reminding her of the ultimate betrayal. One afternoon, while Iko napped on the couch, Ahisha slipped out of the house and made her way to the nearest clinic. Her mind was made up. She would get rid of the baby before the truth destroyed everything. However, as she sat in the clinic, waiting for her turn, she overheard a woman sobbing softly. Curiosity got the best of her, and she leaned in to listen. "I had no choice," the woman whispered to her friend. "I couldn't keep the child. But now, I feel like a part of me is missing. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself." Ahisha's heart pounded. Would she feel the same regret? Could she live with the knowledge that she had taken an innocent life? The thought sent shivers down her spine. She rushed out of the clinic, her decision undone by fear and uncertainty. Back at home, Iko noticed her distress. "Ahisha, what's wrong? You've been distant. Are you sick?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. She shook her head. "No, I'm just tired." But Iko wasn't convinced. He studied her carefully, noticing the slight changes, the way she avoided certain foods, the nausea that crept up on her unexpectedly, the way her body had begun to change. "Ahisha, are you pregnant?" he asked, his voice a mix of surprise and hope. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. The words refused to come out. She couldn't lie. But she also couldn't tell him the truth. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Yes, I'm pregnant." Iko's face lit up with joy. "This is wonderful news. After everything we've been through, this is our blessing." Ahisha felt the walls closing in around her. The pain of his happiness was unbearable, knowing that the child was not his. As the months passed, Ahisha tried to pretend everything was fine. She threw herself into preparing for the baby, hoping that somehow the truth would never come to light. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves, and hers was no different. One fateful evening, Iko found an old letter hidden beneath Ahisha's clothes. It was a receipt from the clinic, the same clinic she had visited on the day she decided against the abortion. The date aligned perfectly with the time when Iko was still recovering from surgery. His hands trembled as he confronted her. "Ahisha, what is this?" he demanded, holding up the receipt. "Why were you at a clinic during that time?" Ahisha's eyes filled with tears. "Iko, Don't lie to me," he roared. "Is this child mine?" The room fell silent. The air was thick with tension as Ahisha struggled to find her voice. Finally, she whispered, "No. The baby isn't yours." Iko staggered back as if she had struck him. Who is the father?" She lowered her head. "Fusa." Iko's face twisted with rage. "You slept with him? The man my father-in-law wanted you to marry? After everything I did for you? After you gave me your kidney?" "I did it to save you," she cried. "You were dying, Iko. I had no other choice." But Iko was beyond reason. His love, his trust, it had all been shattered. "Get out," he said coldly. "Leave my house." Ahisha pleaded, but Iko was unyielding. He pushed her out, slamming the door behind her. For 3 days, she sat outside, waiting for him to let her back in. But he never did. On the 4th night, something inside Ahisha snapped. Anger replaced her grief. She had sacrificed everything for Iko, her dignity, her father's love, even her own body. And in return, he had thrown her away like she was nothing. She made a decision. If Iko did not appreciate what she had given him, then he did not deserve to have it. That evening, she returned to the house one last time. Iko, thinking she had come to beg again, sighed in frustration. "Ahisha, I told you." Before he could finish, Ahisha plunged a knife deep into his abdomen. He gasped, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. "Why?" Ahisha's face was wet with tears, but her voice was steady. "I gave you my kidney, and now I'm taking it back." Iko collapsed to the ground, blood pooling around him. Ahisha stood over him, her heart pounding in her chest. The love they had fought so hard to protect had ended in the most tragic way. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the night, leaving behind the man she had once loved, and the life she had desperately tried to hold on to. Hello tribe, hope we enjoyed today's story. Please kindly put what you've learned in the comments section. Please remember to hit the like button, share this to your friends and family, as well as subscribe to see you on the next one. Bye.